Jazzcast Pros.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fearless Fridays with Maryann. I am super excited because we are doing something that I have never done before, and I have two amazing ladies, and I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves. So who wants to go first?
Guess that's me. Hi, Maryann. I'm Kristy, and I'm the other half of 2Psychic Nobodies. And yeah, we're connecting with you all the way from Australia this morning.
Awesome.
And I'm Amanda, the first half, seeing as you said you're the other half. Yeah, we're both in Australia. I'm in Queensland. Kristy is in New South Wales. So we're actually, even though we're both on the East Coast, we are in different time zones. So that's fun.
Awesome. So who are you? The
2Psychic Nobodies. We're shamanic practitioners. So, or shamanic coaches, we like to call ourselves. So we're both coaches and counselors, and we both have actually done shamanic training with a mentor here in Australia. He's from Western Australia. I guess the question then is, what is that? And I won't say I struggle with it, but it's a constantly evolving answer where it seems to be different every time. But basically, I guess to start with, we have spiritual guides that we tap into and connect with to help with the coaching that we do with a client. Wouldn't you say, Kristy?
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So essentially, the sessions are not of us, but through us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we were talking about it last night, weren't we? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And I was saying that when I'm in my channel, I feel like, remember that movie Limitless? He takes a pill and suddenly everything he's ever read in his whole life, he has full access to. And I feel a little bit like that when I'm really on a roll or in my channel or in the zone, because things just pop in and I'm like, oh, this is the most pertinent piece of information I could possibly have asked for. And here it is. And it's like reading a script that just pops in front of me and I just speak it as it flows in.
Yeah. And I guess the other part of that is we're also just two regular humans who are mums who, have part-time jobs and do normal everyday things, but we also have this interest in, I guess, otherworldly stuff and, bring that all into our sessions now.
So how did you get into this line of work? Was there something that happened in your life that you needed to heal through, or was it something that you had always just been interested in?
Both.
That's such a big question. For me, I come from a line of psychics and really didn't know much about them or, this whole arena of work. And about 10 years ago, I had a spontaneous opening, and my strongest sense is my vision. So I opened up full on hardcore into the world of seeing, and it's just been progressive since then. And very much like when something new opens up, a rebalancing. So it's not as in my face as what it was. So yeah, definitely lots of healing too. Like, Amanda and I talk very openly about our lives being the actual initiation into this work. So we've both had some pretty substantial things happen that would kind of fall under the banner of trauma. So yeah, lots of healing. Like for me, it's just all about coming back to myself and standing in truth and unconditional love. So yeah.
So before we move over to have Amanda answered, can you talk just briefly about one of those traumas that you've experienced and how did the healing help you?
So I have 3 children, and my twins who are 14 are both being diagnosed with special needs. My son was born, and I remember looking at him and saying to the nursing staff, there's something going on here, and nobody listened. And I asked them to do further testing and stuff, and was completely like anything I said just fell on deaf ears. And within probably the week, he went into cardiac arrest and died and had to be brought back. So there was lots that went on in that time, having 2 children diagnosed within the space of sort of 6 months. That whole early years for me with my twins was just constant kind of things popping up that I really didn't know how to deal with, and it was just all about walking through the fire, and it's taken years to pull the layers off that. And occasionally something will still come up, but yeah, it's been a progressive peeling back of the layers of even just that one situation in my life that's brought me to where I am today.
Awesome. And Amanda?
Similarly, I've been really, really fascinated with the way the mind works. And when I was 17, I actually started psychology in high school and then went on to start a psychology degree. And then I accidentally, on purpose, like the way that the universe works, fell pregnant with my eldest son at 20 years old. So, went off and looked after him and did the mum stuff for a while. So since then, I've had another 2 children, but unfortunately, my eldest son ended up having some really serious mental issues and mental health issues since he was about 15. And then 6 years ago, he actually took his own life. And similarly to Kristy, there was so much interaction with the health system and the mental health and hospitals and all that kind of thing. And it was that message and voice of the mother falling on deaf ears and being ignored, and what would you know? And, no one knows my son more than I do. And to the point where after he passed, I actually hired a lawyer and spent a couple of years trying to prove that I had said to them, please do not release him from the hospital. He needs this. He's actually recovering. He's actually the best he's been in a long time. And they just literally packed him a bag and put him into the waiting room and rang me and said, he's waiting, come and get him. And he lasted 5 more weeks. That was it. So, it was a huge awakening for me in that the level of grief that I had to process because of the years of build-up, but then the actual loss itself of my beautiful boy, and realizing that the systems that we have in place aren't always designed to truly support us in the best way that they can, just shifted me into something completely different. And it took me a while, and it was probably only a few years after that I really realized, but now I call that my awakening.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
That's very tough. And thank you so much for both of you for opening up and sharing. So it's interesting how, mental health, here in the States, we know that it's an epidemic. And it's interesting that it's not just a United States thing. It's a worldwide issue.
It really is, yes.
So something definitely has to change. So when we talk about like energy blocks, what exactly are energy blocks, and what are some reasons that those things happens that, you get blocked?
An energy block is generally the body's way and the subconscious way of bringing our attention to something that needs to be addressed, whether it's related to a trauma that needs to be processed and healed or something physical in the body. We believe, we look at physicality and believe that there is always something that sits beneath it, that if that thing is healed and changed and, moved into a positive way of thinking about it, so someone learns a great deal from it, the physical things that sit above it will naturally shift and change and generally fall away.
Yeah, essentially there's something to deal with or to learn, and this is the soul's way of bringing it to our attention. We've just been talking a lot about being unheard, especially being a mother. And we believe that situations in life are an extension of this. Like Amanda talks a lot about when you need to learn courage, you're not just handed a box of courage, you're given situations where you then have to be courageous and move through the fear. So, yeah.
I love that. And that's something that I also, that I talk a lot about, being confident and being courageous and overcoming your fear. So I love the fact that you said that, the universe just doesn't hand you a box and here you go off and be merry. It gives you challenges to work through so you can build that muscle of having courage and having confidence, and that you're ultimately overcoming and working through the fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it was super easy all the time, would we really learn it?
Right.
Yeah.
So what are some ways of clearing up past traumas or, clearing up the energy blocks? What are some ways that people can do that?
We do a lot, and it is a reoccurring theme in our sessions, especially currently, of inner child work. And, dealing with that little person that's feeling as though no one loves them, no one cares for them, no one's listening. We do a lot of inner teen work as well. And of late, we're seeing, the inner adult now stepping forward. And so I guess in a sense, a lot of it is reparenting. Amanda?
What does that mean, reparenting?
It's recognizing where an individual, although they are now an adult, has lacked something in their lives as they were growing up. And it comes full circle back to what Kristy was saying before, and you brought up about, not getting a box of courage. If we're here to learn certain things, then, we're going to miss out on something in our childhood. And if we can't learn it as we're growing up, it's the adult's job to come in and reparent your own self. So as practitioners, we sit as guides to be able to say, okay, this is your role as a child, this is your role as a teen, this is your role as an adult. Now make sure that each individual aspect of self is sitting properly within those roles and only undertaking those things. So the adult is able to say to the child, hey, look, that's my job. You didn't have to do that when you were little, and you shouldn't have been asked to, but, you're awesome for giving it a go. But you know what? I'm going to take the responsibility off you now. And you can just keep playing and doing what it is that you love to do. And I actually like to call this changing the past. If you had the perfect childhood that you wish for, what would you look like now? Well, if you can step into a place where you've healed everything and grown and learned the lessons, then aren't you that person now anyway? And if you can have a relationship with your inner child where you check in on her or him and say, how you doing? What's going on? Oh, I climbed this tree and I went and played with my friends and I made this collage and I ate some fruit and it was all awesome. You're like, yeah, that's great. That's the kind of childhood that I really wanted. So that's where I'm energetically going to tap into from now on.
I love that. And I love that for so many different reasons, but the podcast, everything that I do, speaking engagements and things like that, is all about healing the inner child.
Yeah.
Here in the States, when people talk about fear, many people associate it with false evidence appearing real. For me, fear stands for feeling empty, abandoned, and rejected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are things that I've experienced as a child where I felt empty, where I felt abandoned, where I felt rejected. And I made all the crazy decisions as a teenager that I made in my early adulthood years because of that brokenness.
Yep.
Because you then step into trying to protect yourself, and that's where these things become layered upon us. And, as an adult, it can be a journey to take those layers off and come back to that little girl underneath.
Yeah. I love that. So we are going to be doing something that, as I mentioned before, I've never done before. So I don't know who wants to go ahead and get started.
Yeah, no worries.
Kristy actually has the deck of cards.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, we're still designing the final copies and colours and all that kind of thing to get them printed. So we have literally hand-drawn cards.
We all have to start somewhere.
That's it. So, but they do the job. That's the main thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Awesome. So I'll give them a shuffle, Amanda, if you want to do all the extra bits.
Yeah, sure. So, Maryann, do you give us both full permission for our guides and your guides to connect today for the purpose of this reading?
Yes.
And do you give our guides and us full permission to access your Akashic records again for the purpose of this reading today?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you have a question, intention, or something you'd like to address?
Just got goosebumps.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good.
I guess I would just say, just checking in with my inner child and my teenage Maryann to just see how they're doing.
Yeah, beautiful. Awesome. All right. So underneath that intention, let's have a look. I'll just do a clear. All right. So our first card is the feminine. Our second card is the crown, which is all about the higher self and sovereignty. And awesome. What a great spread. Our third card is the solar plexus, which is power, freedom, and clarity. Not one inversion. So let's go. Okay. So for me, dropping in straight away, this is like a whole new host of opportunities that is just hanging back there, Maryann. And it's like something to do with what you're already doing, and it's literally just a permission thing. And this is all about the adult. And she's actually, now that I've tuned into her, she's giving me the thumbs up. Everything seems to be really good with the little girl. Teenage, and this is actually, if we tune in deeper onto the teenager, there seems to be almost like a little gap or like a seal that seems to be leaking. I might spend some time having a look at that. Amanda, what's coming up for you on your end?
Yeah, so I was getting something to do with the teen as well. Like the whole inner child is pretty good, and the teen has a feeling of kind of, I guess, the abandonment. So the A, the feeling of resentment because there's that protection as she's, the child doesn't know how to protect herself properly necessarily. So as she gets older into a teenager, the protection becomes resentment and becomes that level of, F you kind of attitude.
Angry.
And yeah. And there's just that, I'll do it my way, I'll do what I want. And I think there's that disparity between the gentle, compassionate loving of the inner child from the adult versus the, how could you do that? Oh my God, what decisions you made? What did you do as a teenager? So I would say just bringing in that compassion for the teen as much as it has been for the child.
Yeah, and to extend on that, they're showing me it's actually a past life that's behind me, and it's the phrase slipping through my fingers. And when I zoomed in on that, it's actually how could I have put myself in those situations? The guides actually brought through an image of walking down the street and slipping over on like an icy puddle, right? So it's like, this is not my fault, but it's like when I get in closer again, it's putting yourself in unnecessary situations whether it be entering a relationship or entering, a physical place, places that you didn't really have to be in, then there's this, I want to say, a kind of injury or a trauma or something that's happened that essentially you think could have been prevented. But really the guides are saying it probably wasn't really necessary to go in there in the first place. And then when we go higher again, it's just all it is about forgiving yourself at that deep level for putting yourself in situations that, like the guides have said, like you were always supposed to be there, right? So there was never any question around it. But again, it's just that deep level of forgiveness.
And it's also recognizing as an adult that no matter what choices we make at any given time, we can renege on those choices. It is our, I guess, responsibility, empowerment, sovereignty. We have the ability to choose. And just because you've made a decision in the past doesn't mean you can't change it any time you like.
Yeah.
Often we get more information. Well, if I'd made that decision with that information in the first place, I wouldn't have gone down this path necessarily. So it's okay to say, well, I'm taking a step back. This is going to change now. And that's a learning thing that teenagers don't necessarily understand. It's really an adult ability.
And concept, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the power now stands in this situation of deep forgiveness. You can not do that and continue forward and kind of harbor these feelings towards yourself, or you can make the choice, and Amanda and I refer to this as a choice point, to step into that deeper level of forgiveness, which this feels like such a deep layer. And so the guides are showing me you have done this sort of work before, but it's like, this is kind of like the little tendrils, like the energy is so fine that it's almost hard to notice until someone says something or you think about something from the past. How does that sound for you, Maryann?
I guess it explains why I got the goosebumps when we first started, because I've always been focused on healing my inner child and kind of always forgetting about the teenage years. And neither one of you know about me that I was actually in custody of the New York State, where I live, New York State juvenile delinquent system for about 3 years. I was in and out of group homes and detention centers. I was always running away from home. I dropped out of high school when I was 16 years old. I was pregnant for the first time when I was 17, but I had a miscarriage. Then got pregnant again later on when I was 18, had my son when I was 19, and experimented with drugs, with alcohol, lived, whenever I ran away from the juvenile delinquent centers, stayed in abandoned buildings with friends and things like that. I remember being in high school that till this day, all I remember was that I went to a party, a skip party. So a bunch of us skip school. We went to a party. I have no idea how I got home.
Yeah.
I know that I got home the way that my parents described me. My pants were undone. So I have no idea of what happened, who I was with, how I got home, or any of that. So again, like I've always focused on healing little Maryann, because when I was a child, under the age of 7, because I remember I was living in Puerto Rico, I was sexually abused.
Yeah.
So I've always focused on that, because that was one of the things that was brought on when I was in the juvenile delinquent system, seeing a psychiatrist, but I have never focused on healing teenage Maryann.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you've got to remember that teenage Maryann was basically acting out of woundings that were not dealt with at that time. So just knowing that then brings a sense of forgiveness. And we talk a lot about separating the individual from the behavior too, which I think is another really important thing to bring in here.
Yeah, that's right. So the teenager is very connected to the child, and what the child went through. So, you know, she's protecting herself, and, you know, there's that duality of, or polarity of, I want love, but I'm pushing it away and I'm looking for it in all the wrong places and from all the wrong people, but I don't know what love looks like. Now, if you're not brought up to know what that looks like, how do you start to create an environment full of people that are giving it to you? You can't. You have to find it within yourself and create it for yourself. And that can take practice. Just like a child or a teenager is practicing to do different things when they learn something. You know, a baby learns to walk and they fall down, they get up, they fall down, and they get up, they fall down. They hold on to things and walk around and, oh, look, I'm using the chair to steady myself, all the little things. And everyone's like, so cute, well done. You know, but as an adult, when we learn new things, we forget about that. You're going to fall down and, oh, that didn't work. That's okay. You know, we talk about mistakes being a mistake. You know, take one, that missed. Take two, that missed. Eventually you're going to get it. We just have to trust in that and have that faith that we're going to get through. It doesn't matter how many times it takes, because we're going to get there eventually.
Yeah. So, Maryann, how do you feel about maybe putting some statements of release around that?
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Amanda, I'm thinking, and the thing that, you know, came up earlier, but the power of permission, you know, permission to let it all go. Did you want to lead that, and I can kind of pick at the energy as it comes through?
Sure.
Okay.
Wow. This has been absolutely amazing. Make sure that you come back next week for part 2, as I'm about to dig deep into some somatic healing and integration. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please leave us a 5-star review and share with a friend or two. Please connect with me on LinkedIn at Maryann Rivera Dannert,